because you have to have social interaction and you have to have a reason to spread your to stretch your legs. What? Like the amount of effort, it's also the thing that a lot of people disregard is not just the cost. It's how much is my time worth?
You know your mother's watching this
That,
right now.
yes, absolutely. My mother, again, has no delusions about the way that I live my life. No, it's not worth it. It's not. If I'm going to spend an hour cooking something to then spend 10 minutes to eat it, then spend another hour to clean the dishes, that's 2 hours of my life that is now gone.
Well, question number one, how many, how are you making this chicken to have an hour's worth of dishes?
It's probably just me doing it wrong.
Well, like the goal would be to like cook
Using
enough
round
to
numbers.
last you a few days.
No.
You spend like the time now, but you have like a meal for like the next few days.
I
Like,
won't eat the same thing for 3 days.
You can get a couple meals. Like you can get two meals on something that would break down to like $7. Like after cooking it.
Yeah.
Well, but that's what I paid for the chicken pre-cooked. Like
That's the same thing. And well, all right. So the chicken argument is valid because that's a good way
That
to
was-
be able to
yeah,
substitute
and they
like
got
2
good chicken
meals.
too, yeah.
Like if you sat down and you just processed it. I could even stretch 3 out of it if I needed to.
okay.
But like going to Burger King like twice versus like actually buying food, you can probably like get 5 meals out of the amount that you spent at Burger King.
Well, I mean, I spend $5 every time I go to Burger King for like with their coupon that they never changed the code for.
Yes.
So
Fair enough.
that's it. Like I don't think I spend an exuberant amount of money. I just shift the amount of money that I spend from time to dollars. Because I don't have enough time in my life right now, especially considering all of the projects that we have. So for me to spend an hour cooking something is absurd. I can't do it. I don't have enough time.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you could make it work, I mean, it's just like, I don't know. I mean, that makes sense with the time. And if you don't have the time and you do have the dollars, then that makes sense making the.
It's not more expensive. I don't think it's
But
that
that's the
much
thing,
more
it's- well,
expensive.
Yeah,
No?
right. And it's kind of you know what you're making, so it could be potentially healthier. So you know, like
Fair
like
enough,
this thing's
yeah.
not loaded with
Yeah,
like
well-
sodium tripolyphosphate.
They gotta
I don't know what that
pump
is.
up those
I don't-
chickens to make them fatter, Tyler.
That's
You
how,
can't.
yeah, that's how they get them chickens big as STP.
It is what it is. You know?
But anyways,
Those
besides that.
years come off the end, Tyler. Those are the worst ones anyway.
Say that in 10 years when you're 28.
Interestingly enough, somebody came up to me yesterday and said this is actually an interesting conversation starter. Paul, who we all know, came up to me and said, "Oh, you guys should talk about this on the show." And I was like, "That's actually a really good idea." So I'm going to add it to the show notes, and it was already in the show notes.
Oh, nice.
So
Who
there
put
you
it there?
go. This was, and Tyler actually put it in there. The show notes are getting too long.
yeah.
If you do not make time for your wellness, you will be forced to make time for your sickness.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. That's a new one, too.
There you go. So I do agree with this. I think that it's important. Self health is very important, but that's not just a physical thing. That's also like mental, emotional, and so on. So does anyone have any opening statements?
Yeah, if we're going to talk about that, I think we briefly mentioned, but I don't know how well it communicated in the show. Like, if you go to sleep at night and you put your phone in plug, like use a phone analogy. You're a phone. So you go to sleep and you
I am not a phone.
you are now an android.
Correct. You got demoted.
Don't make me bring you to Obama phone.
I'll stop.
So if you think that you're a phone, like anybody who's ever owned a phone, like after a while, your maximum battery life, just your battery gets cooked. But say you plug in your phone and then you wake up in the morning, it's 90%. It's like, okay, well I can deal with 90% on a battery, but that battery gets like the next night you plug it in, but you plug it in a little later. So when you wake up the next day, you only get 80, and then you plug it in again, like because you're going to bed at the same time. That 80 was turned into like 70. It's like this compound thing where you don't take care of yourself just a little bit today, and then you don't take care of yourself a little bit more tomorrow, and then you don't take care of yourself a little bit more. It's like this gradual decline, and eventually, like, you're trying to do something that when you had 90 was fine, but you're cooked because you only had 40 to begin with.
Yeah.
That's kind of that's a really big thing. It's like not getting appropriate rest, not getting appropriate sleep. This whole food thing, not eating appropriately, really affects how you get your feet on the ground to get going. It's like if I wake up every morning and I have this like massive caffeine headache and I never deal with it, whether it's by drinking liquid drugs or or by any means of like, okay, I need to ride this out and figure out some kind of a better lifestyle.
Yeah.
You're handicapping yourself because you can't put the right foot forward.
I think self-awareness is like huge on this because a lot of people don't like. There's even moments in my life, obviously hunger and like the necessities are you've realized those immediately, but there's a lot of things that you don't even realize are affecting you until it's like affected you.
You know,
like it's too late and it's all like you're at 50%.
You know what I'm thinking too? A lot of things that, especially as men, that fall by the wayside. Really having men friends, like real good friends. A lot of men fall into this trap, and I mean, I see it all the time with a lot of people, especially like once they get married. They lose all of their friends, and only their spouse is their friend.
Yeah.
When it's so important as men to be able to have those other men to interact with, be like, I have these man problems, I need to be able to talk them out, or I just need somebody who thinks the same way that I do, because men and women are different.
Yeah.
And as it's wonderful to be best friends with your spouse, but every man needs a real guy friend just to be able to have that outlet or have that emotional health place, because men understand men. Men and women are different.
Yeah.
And there's only so much that can cover.
I agree.
I agree with that statement. I was confused as to where that came from, but that's fine. I do agree with what you're saying.
It came out of left field, but I mean,
no,
it's still
absolutely. But mental health in general is very important because it's not something that you see right away, and having those people to vent to, and there's a lot of different ways to achieve that. But it's important that we realize that it's gradual in the it's gradual in the positive, and it's gradual in the negative too. Where it's like you don't really see, like when you're getting better, you're not seeing a massive change day by day, and when you're getting worse, you're not seeing a massive change day by day. But when you look at the trends over time, you can see those massive downward trends or those massive upward trends. You know, and it's something that humans like to see results. We like to see either like a positive or a negative based off of our actions. And it's tough when it's mental, and it's tough when it's physical, because those things only show themselves years or months or sometimes decades down the road.
Well, it's a slow fade, and that's the biggest, I guess, the biggest worry. It's like, okay, well, it doesn't look dangerous now, or it doesn't feel completely dangerous now, because you get so accustomed to it, and then eventually, like, wow, how did I get here? It's like it was over days, weeks, months of neglect or bottling these things up. Like, you have a problem with somebody, or you're angry, say, even with your spouse, and it's like that little thing festers for a day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and then they like leave the toilet seat up, and it just explodes into like
that was all it needed. Yeah.
That's all it took.
Yeah, absolutely. Yesterday, I'll be completely transparent. Yesterday, I was kind of aggravated at something, and like I'm usually very good at controlling my emotions, because I don't think that it's worth getting upset for most things. But this was something that I really bothered me, and I was like, I need to stop this situation right now. So I had to interact with the person who had done the thing that had bothered me, and I just laid it out on the table, and I was like, hey, listen, like this bothers me as an individual. I don't know why it does, but it does bother me. And that, just saying it, solved the problem.
Yep.
It wasn't even the interaction with the other person. It was just like, okay, I have said this now, and it makes me feel better. Yeah. You know, and not a lot of times we have that situation where it's like, that's a very rare type of thing, where most things, it's like, most people will take something and they'll disregard the little failures, and those little fractures end up breaking the whole situation. If you understand, like,
it's a bunch of little cracks rather than one big rift in the middle. All the little cracks add up.
For me, a very personal story. You know, when I was younger, I would drink a lot, and what I really found out later in life was, like, every problem I had at that point, whatever it was. It's all very mental stuff, like very small things, and you would just drink it and forget about it.
Me too.
And once you get to that point of that became like a habit. So I did that for years, where it was just like I would just drink, and I wouldn't even realize what the problems were until I made the conscious decision to stop drinking. And then it hit, everything came back and hit me like a ton of bricks. Like everything that I had neglected, everything that I had drank through. It's not like, if I don't deal with this today, I'll never have to deal with it. You're just prolonging the time that you're going to have to deal with it, because eventually you will have to face the things that you're avoiding. So I think it's really important to take control of your life and handle those things that bother you as soon as possible. Like with Benji, with that thing that aggravated you, brought it up and you took care of it on the spot, instead of letting it ferment and sit and bottled up inside of you, which it would have eventually have exploded somewhere else.
And it would have been worse. And it's something, it's very important. We talk about procrastination when we talk to, this is the same concept as procrastination, that it's like, if you take this, what you're going through right now, and all you do is kick the can down the road to tomorrow, eventually that's going to stop, and all of the cans that you've kicked down the road are going to show up at the same time. And it's like, whatever situation you're going through right now, whatever your problem is right now, it's uncomfortable to deal with it right now, but it'll be really uncomfortable when you have to deal with that problem along with all of the rest of the problems that you've already diverted.
Like like we were just saying, you're burning the candle, so you're at 90, you're at 80, you're at 70, you're at 60, and you're getting progressively more tired because you're mentally exhausted, you're physically exhausted, and that problem that was only a little problem in the moment, but it was uncomfortable. When you're at 30, that problem becomes so big, just because of the fact that you don't have the emotional strength, the physical strength, the mental strength to be able to handle it in that moment.
And that's like that. What they're saying is like, face your monsters. That's the monster you're creating. Every time you let something go by and not handle it, it becomes a part of this bigger monster, and eventually you're gonna have to face it. Eventually, it's going to be so big, it's going to be very overwhelming.
Well, think about a weed. You have a little weed that's growing up out of a flower bed. You can just pluck it right out with your fingers right away. But if you let that thing grow, I mean, it could even be a sapling to a tree. You let that thing fester for a year or two, and all of a sudden, this thing has a root system that's so too big, and you'll need a dump truck to pull it out.
Yeah, and absolutely, and that works the same way in a human. These things can take root in you, and they can kind of dictate how your decisions are made because of a trauma that you didn't deal with 5 years ago. And now you always do the same thing because of something that happened then that you never dealt with, and now it has such a deep root in you that it's hard for you to face it, because now it's like it affects other things in your life. And it's just I know there's a lot of people that are in that position now, because I mean, I was once there, and Tyler was once there, and I'm sure Benji has been there too. But it's like, it is very hard to start to actually face it, but it is my biggest recommendation to start facing that as soon as possible.
Absolutely. You think of like couples counseling, where it's all like somebody will live in a marriage for 20, 30 years, and then they put the fork in the wrong spot, and then there's this explosion. And it's all like, you go to couple, and
it has nothing to do with the fork.
It has nothing to do with the fork. It's like you go into a screaming match about the color of the napkins on the table, that they don't match the thing. It's like the napkins don't matter, and I think people get so caught up on the color of the napkins that they forget that it's been 20 years of unhappiness. And it's like, you can't expect, the napkins aren't going to fix the problem, and the napkins aren't going to break it. It's just, this is the visual representation of everything that's happened so far. We talk about medicine, where it's all like, the symptoms are the result of the problem. If you fix the symptoms, it's not going to fix the problem. You change the color of the napkins, you're not going to fix the underlying issue that's there. And it's important for us to realize that, because we get so caught up and we get these blinders, like Tyler was saying with the concept of like a significant other. Spending so much time with a significant other is one example of this, where it's like, you put on these blinders, this is the only thing that I'm focusing on right now, that everything else gets left to the wayside, and by the time you take a look at everything, it's deteriorated to such a point that it's going to take a massive effort to rebuild it.
If we're getting into specifics with that really for some reason that's really pulling on my heart this morning. But I've seen it with a bunch of my friends, and I've seen it through even older people, like parents of people, where like you spend all this time with your husband or wife, or say you're a guy and you're alone and you don't have any man friends in your life, and you only have kids, and say your kids are only daughters, and it's just like you and your wife, and it's just you and your wife. your ability to be able to communicate and to be able to make a friendship outside of being you and your wife significantly gets lower and lower and lower the longer you stay isolated in this little family. I mean, family is beautiful. I'm not saying destroy your family, not have deep roots within your family and have a great connection with your wife. But when you get into this husband-wife echo chamber, it starts to deteriorate to the point where you can't make meaningful and healthy friendships outside of that because that's all you know.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think a lot of people have issues making friendships when they're older. Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of benefits and there's a lot of whatever. There's a lot of non-benefits to high school. But the idea of the schooling system is we take a bunch of kids, we put them in the same general area, and they're going to learn some stuff, but that's not really the main concept. It's the social skills. Interaction that's the point. That's the point. Like that's what a lot of people miss about high school is the concept that it's not about the subjects, it's about the people. You're supposed to interact with each other, and that's what the whole thing is. And when people get older, they lose that social interaction because they pick a group of people who they like at the most, which sometimes is just their family, and then they don't interact with the world around them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is like really pulling at my past too, so this is a cool episode for me. But like at one point, like I was the person who would be like, I would get in a relationship, and then that relationship would become a big part of me. And I've gotten called out on it many times, and it's like it comes down to like practice. So like if you're only focusing all your attention on one person, you really forget how to be you in a bigger group, and you don't know how to socially interact with people because you haven't done it in so long. And that's really where it gets dangerous. But we're going to come back from the break because the Ducks are here.
We would like to thank Anchor for sponsoring and hosting the Life podcast. So who are Anchor and what do they do? Anchor is the all-in-one platform that gives you everything you need to make and publish your podcast. And best of all, it's all free. Anchor allows you to use their creative tools to record and edit your podcast. No need for any fancy professional equipment. Sounds amazing, right? And we haven't even gotten to the best part. Anchor isn't just a recording and editing platform. They're a publisher too. This means that Anchor takes care of all of the hard stuff, like publishing to Apple and Google Podcasts, so you don't have to. So what are you waiting for? Download the Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. Another thanks to Anchor for hosting, publishing, and sponsoring the Life podcast.
Think about it. Right, it's like, I go to the movies alone and I pay for it. I look like a lowly somebody.
Yeah,
like somebody. Like who cares? Who cares what it looks like? It's like you wanted to go see Avengers, or you wanted to go see The Notebook by yourself. Like, hey, God bless you, buddy. Like,
yeah, go.
Hammer down.
Like all your friends are busy. That doesn't mean you need to stay home all day.
The Notebook.
Oh, the Notebook.
Yeah, there you go. Whatever floats your boat. I wasn't gonna judge it.
Hey, that's my go-to. It's like he doesn't write about me in The Notebook.
It's not that bad of a movie.
I've never watched it.
It's not that bad actually.
Yeah, I'm actually proud to say I've never watched it.
Well, it's what you get. That's what you're buying. You know what I mean? It's not.
I don't like to pay for movies or watch movies that make me sad.
Oh yeah, it's a pretty sad.
I bet. And so it's like I'd rather not pay some. Especially at that time, like my life was sad as it was. So
okay.
I don't need to pay nobody for additional.
I don't need
sadness.
Artificial sadness. I have my own homegrown.
I got my own stuff.
Yes. All right. So we're talking about self-awareness and really just talking about taking care of ourselves. What was that quote again, Benji? Can you roll that in? My phone's charging.
I got you. Hold on, there we go. If you do not make time for your wellness, you will be forced to make time for your sickness.
Oh, that's so true. I mean, when I wrote that down, I talked more about like physical sickness, so much where like you can run yourself down so far to the point where well, I mean, it translates into any kind of sickness, but you run yourself down so far that it's like you're going to be forced into the bed and do nothing because you didn't take care of yourself in the long run. Or think about a car. You run a car so long you don't change the oil. Eventually, that car is going to be forced to stop by forces of nature.
My dad, like I said on a couple shows back, my dad always used to say, you're going to spend the same amount of money. You can spend it on the vacations or you can spend it in the divorce. And it's such a core concept where it's all like, sometimes we make quote unquote sacrifices we lower certain standards of life because we want to gain it somewhere else, but we're causing other things to happen that are detrimental to our day-to-day lives. And it's like, if you're going to be greedy, the concept is like, don't be greedy of the money because you're going to lose the money either way. And it's the same thing with, it's like, don't be greedy in your relationships, don't be greedy in your friends, don't be greedy on like your personal well-being, because that's going to come out some other way.
And it's an investment too. You're investing your time and your resources. So it's just a matter of like, if you invest it into the parts like the well-being part now, you're prolonging the happiness of your life later. That's physically and mentally and any other way you can think of it. Even in a relationship with somebody, you have to get the basic needs met. Every human being has a basic needs: shelter, food, water. You have to get those things met in order to get to the next level of life. And if you can't get those basic needs met, if you're hungry and starving all day long because you don't want to spend, you're trying to save money, and you have the money but you're trying to keep it in a savings account, and so you're going to sacrifice the food today and you'll just eat once later, and it's like you're really cutting your life at the end.
And just because you did that and you saved those couple extra dollars, you explode on your wife and kids because you had the wrong color napkins on the dinner table.
Exactly.
It's like, what did that just cost you? That just costed you your entire house hating you because you were too cheap to go buy yourself a $1.49 10-piece chicken nugget from Burger King. Shout out.
Shout out to Burger King. We have coupons.
Sponsored,
if you click on the link below.
No, but that's legit. And we were talking about during the break just investing in yourselves and how important that is. I mean, we kind of rolled in with that whole movie thing, but it's like, if you can't invest in yourself to be able to make sure that yourself, your mental self, spirit, soul, and body are in alignment, then everything else is going to be out of line. We were talking about having a small friend group, and okay, a small friend group's better than no friend group, but at the same time, if you're so invested in that small friend group and those are the only people that you interact with, if Benji and Eric are busy, I'm just wrecked because they're my entire life.
Yeah.
I can't go out and just do something on my own or go reach to any other extended friends that I do have.
Yeah, we were talking about the concept of going to the movies because that's the one that a lot of people have, because you sit down, if you take a poll of people and you say, how many of you would go to the movies by yourself? I don't think a lot of them would say yes. And I don't know if that's like, and if like, it's some will argue the whole purpose of going to the movies is the social aspect of it, but that's not necessarily true. You know, you go and you watch the movie, whatever. But like, the core concept is, would you spend time with yourself? Can you spend time with yourself as a person? And if the answer is no, why should anybody else want to spend time with you?
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, if you don't like yourself, why should anybody else like you? And I don't mean that in a negative way, because a lot of people take that in a negative sense, where it's all like, I hate myself.
That's exactly
and
what I
hates
say.
me. Yeah, exactly. It's like, I've been telling myself that for years. It's like, no.
Missed the point.
It's like yourself and be the person that you want to be, and then people will be drawn to that.
I feel like that really falls down. Becky was asking me last night. She was like, hey, do you really like all like those long drives going out to New York? I guess she's never driven like more than like 4 hours.
Oh yeah.
So like, she was asking me, I'm gonna go visit my friend Curtis in another less than
couple
2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's a 7-hour drive. If you stop a few times, it's more than 7 hours. And it's like, do you mind doing that all by yourself? Just like going there? I'm like, yeah, I love doing that. I mean, I could have some great conversations. You want some great advice? I'll get it from me. You know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
No, but I mean, I'm just playing around with that. But yeah, like, if you're comfortable with yourself, you can be able to do it. As much as, okay, like, everybody needs social interaction and company. I look forward to 7 hours of being able to just organize my thoughts, sit myself down somewhere and say, okay, shake this out, shake this out, shake this out. You were thinking about this. You have uninterrupted time to be able to think about this concept or whatever it is.
Time alone is huge. You have to get back to your core. Like, we spend all day, every day with somebody, right? And now we're talking about people who can't do anything alone, and they have to always be with somebody. And every moment of the day, you're with somebody doing something, unless you're sleeping. So you're taking influence from these people because you're spending so much time with them. You're conversating with them. You're taking their thoughts. You're taking their ideas. You're agreeing with them. You're disagreeing. You're doing all sorts of stuff because and this is what humans do. We're interacting.
Yes.
And if you keep doing that and you don't take the time to spend by yourself, you you lose a piece of yourself.
Yep.
You start to forget who you are if you do it long enough.
It's so true.
So it's so important to have 7 hours is a long ride, but like it's so important to take the day and just be alone and really organize your thoughts and really understand where you are today versus where you want to be. Because if you keep spending that time with other people, they're going to dictate where you're going.
Absolutely. And but you hang out with the sheep, you'll smell like sheep.
Absolutely.
You hang out with pigs, you smell like pigs.
And it could be good people too that you're hanging out with. It's not necessarily like, but you're going to become like them, and that's maybe not necessarily what you want.
And 7 hours, yeah, like let's not get that wrong. 7 hour drive like by yourself, like that's kind of grueling. That's pro level.
Yeah, that's
but if you can't go and take yourself out for lunch for an hour or so and go people watch somewhere and just look at people and observe everything around you. Observe yourself, look inside of you.
Yeah.
Like that's a big thing. A lot of people can't be alone or without any kind of outside stimulus because their internals are so jacked up, and they need they need people around them or things around them to be able to not think about what they're thinking about.
Exactly.
It's like that thing that you've been putting away.
Yep.
There was one time recently that I invited you guys both. Eric was busy and you were sleeping.
I'm triggered.
So I was like, I want to go get a coffee. I want to go get a coffee in Providence.
Yep.
So I was like, oh, you guys want to go? And neither of you were available. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna go to Providence and I'm gonna get a coffee.
Yeah.
Like it is what it is. So I went to a restaurant that we know and I sat outside and somebody passed by. This group of kids passed by and was like, he's sitting and eating alone. And I was like, what? I was like, that's the level that you operate at, that you think it's odd for somebody to sit and have a coffee by themselves?
Yeah, and that's like social. That's culture.
Why didn't you tell us this story earlier?
I did.
You told him. You didn't tell me.
I think you said it on the podcast.
I thought I had already told this story.
I'm pretty sure it's on an earlier episode.
Tyler just totally forgot.
Yeah, but anyways, so what was it? Yeah, but that's like culture. That's like a cultural thing where he's alone. He must not have any friends.
Yeah,
and it's like no. I'm alone because I choose to be alone.
Yeah.
I want a coffee.
Because I wanted a coffee.
And I don't want to deal with humans like you.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you're the reason why you're on that side of the fence. But it's also like, you have to talk. We talk about the noise level that's actively happening in our brain.
Yes.
Where it's all like, if you're always operating at a high, like you talk about hearing. Hearing is a physical representation of this. If you're always in a loud environment, your like level for hearing is going to go. Like the minimum threshold is going to go higher. So when somebody whispers across the room, you're not going to hear anything. Exactly. What'd you say? It's like that's basically what it is. The same thing mentally.
So I had an incident at my Friday night job. And it's so funny how this works too. And I'll just put everybody on blast just for the sake of the podcast. But we had a late one this past Friday, and I had already loaded 3 trucks, which was like that's a fair amount of
That's
trucks.
overtime at the bank.
Yeah, that's overtime at the bank. It's already getting around like 3 o'clock ish, 3:30. I'm like, I'm cooked. I've already worked a ton, and I was like, you know what? I mean, inside the warehouse, all kinds of forklifts going, propane lifts. It's loud. Beep, beep, beep. It's so loud. And hanging out in the office, as much as I could have hung out in the office, I don't want to be around people, especially those people. Yeah. It's one of those things. It's like, this is not rest for me. It's like I have to be on my guard while I'm around these people.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna go sit in my truck for 5 minutes. I'm just gonna sit down in my truck. I'm pretty sure I had the windows up. If not, I'll roll the window down and just sit there for 5 minutes and just have something quiet. Try to regain my bearings for a minute so I can go in there and just get the last few things of what I need to do done. And I was out there and I was like, this is really nice being away from the noise and everything. Somebody walks out of the door that I work with, looks and sees me and just turns around and goes back inside. And I'm looking at them like, okay. I was gone less than 5 minutes. I mean, we take breaks all the time, and longer breaks. Like if you're in the office chit chatting, it would 10, 15, 20, who knows how long. And it's like I was there for less than 5 minutes. I guess that guy went in and told everybody like, "Hey, Tyler's sleeping in his truck." And word started like traveling fast, and like I ended up getting back from my mom of all people. She's like, "Hey, I heard you were sleeping on the job on Friday." Like, who'd you hear that from? Oh, they heard it from this person who heard it from this person.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, this is what happened here. I already hit my work threshold. I was ahead of everybody, and I needed just 5 minutes away from the machine noise so that I could re-get my bearings so that we could finish the night so I could go home. We didn't get home till like 4:30.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But it was like being able to go outside, to have outside, like, my external environment match my internal environment.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we have to make that homeostasis thing where our insides match our outsides. We've talked about it on the podcast before. It's like, it's not a perfect science, but if somebody lives in a constant mess, like if their car is a constant mess, generally speaking, their internals are matching their externals. It's if you're content in the mess that you live in, and you live in day after day after day after day after day in this slob hole mess, it's like, because inside is a slob hole mess, or you always need music going. You always need something so loud. I mean, having music a lot is fine, especially as a musician. I understand. I listen to music a lot.
Yeah.
But it comes to place, like, if you always need, like, that audible stimulation, it's like, okay, well, it's so loud inside that you need the outside to match the inside, kind of thing. Like, even when it's like completely unnecessary to have music, you have to have music.
Yeah.
That's so true, and it's something that's so, like, easy to not even notice, especially when you're growing up and you're, like, in your 20s, and all sorts of things. You go through a lot, you know what I mean? A lot of situations. You're still trying to figure out where you want to be in life, so you throw yourself into so many situations of life, and you things get very loud, both, like, mentally and physically. So it's really important to realize when you're playing music because you want to play music, or when you're playing music as a distraction so you don't listen to yourself. And that's huge.
It's so true.
There's this little,
I get all kinds of stuff.
This small little analogy that I keep thinking of, which is kind of funny. If you've ever been part of, like, boats, you know that if you leave a boat in the water over time, it accumulates, like, barnacles and all those things, you know. And if you leave it for a certain amount of time, it makes the boat less efficient, just based off of the way that it is. And it's the same thing with our lives, that over time, the more that we actively participate in the things that we participate in, the more the boat's in the water, the more things are going to grow onto it, the more little unnecessary things we're going to develop. And we have to take time to take the boat out of the water and to start scraping them off, because if we don't do that, you're going to lose more than you gain by doing that.
There's a proverb we read all the time, and it's like, where the ox is, like, the trough gets dirty because you have to feed the ox, but much work comes through the ox. And it's like, okay, well, if you want to get a lot of things done, sometimes your trough gets dirty, your boat gets dirty. It's like you have to take the time to clean it. But if you don't do anything, like, it's just as bad. It's like, okay, well, I didn't get anything done, but it's nice and clean in here. Yeah, but you didn't do anything.
I'm glad you said that, because it's like, we're not saying, oh, don't get dirty. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that is a part of this. The harder you work, the more you have to maintain. The harder you work, and the more productivity you get out of your life, the more you have to maintain on the back end to keep it going. If you only focus on productivity, then the maintenance part gets, and you neglect the maintenance part, you're going to go slower. And it's part of life. It's a balance. You have to keep maintaining so that you can keep going.
I know the ducks are here. One practical application right here, and I'm sure you guys all agree, you need to take at least one day a week to be able to just, like,
absolutely,
cash,
absolutely
nothing, do absolutely nothing. And the older I get, and the more I've burnt the candle, the more I can see, like, you need one straight day of cash.
Yeah, there are seasons where you have to work, and there are seasons where you have to understand that life is more important than just the number in the bank account or the position at the bank or whatever. And we're going to talk about practical application when we get back, but that's a very, very important thing, where we have to look at the big picture. We can't say, okay, I made an extra $300 this week. It's, how does was that $300 worth the amount that I lost mentally?
Absolutely. Well, stay tuned. So the first rank is psychological needs: food, water, warmth, rest. Once you get those things down, you go to the next, which is security and safety. And once you get that, you go into intimate relationships and friends. And then you get into prestige and feeling of accomplishment. And that leads to the top self-fulfillment of achieving one's full potential, and including creative activities. So you have to have, like, the concept behind that is you have to have all those things in place to get to the top.
And what'd you call that? The Camp Maslow pyramid?
No, Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs. Which I've mentioned briefly before on one of the episodes, but it was very brief. I didn't get into any details on it. But it's a very, I think it's a great concept of you do have to get like basic needs in your life in place and set. Like it's foundational. You have to get the foundation pieces in order to get to another level of your life. You're not going to be worried about, I can't. You're not gonna be worried about like your friends and all that if you're hungry. You know what I mean? You have to fill like the basic needs in order to worry about bigger things in your life. And if you're not even aware, like, why can't I maintain any friends? And it's like, well, you don't even have like a place to live and you're hungry all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not yourself.
Wow, this is really good.
Yeah.
Think about like a wild animal. The difference between a domesticated and a wild animal is that mental development. And it's like wild animals act the way that they do because they're going after the base of the pyramid because their pyramid isn't secure enough to be built up to the top. So it's like, okay, well, I'm always food driven. I am motivated by food and shelter. That is it.
Exactly. So they never get that sense of security and safety. So they're always stuck at that level 1, unless they get domesticated.
Yeah.
And then you have like a dog who obviously over time will feel that sense of security and feels a lot more comfortable. And his worries aren't so much of like food, other than like, I know my owner's gonna feed me, and his tail is wagging all the time. It's a really cool concept.
Or even like I have rabbits that live in my yard. I mean, I live in the middle of the city, and I got rabbits, and these rabbits don't even flinch when I go outside. They're like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Hey, you got some food? No? Oh, all right.
I saw a squirrel, and fidgety a squirrel is, but I saw one in Boston, and I walked by.
Yeah.
I almost kicked that thing, and it didn't move.
Same thing. I was sitting with some homeless guys in Needle Park, right across the street from the garden and everything.
Yeah.
And we were sitting there, we were feeding squirrels peanuts, and they were coming, they were touching our fingers, just standing there. I'm like, oh, this is pretty legit. Like, this is like the ultimate hobo pastime.
Yes, absolutely. To go back to the pyramid, it's important to realize
Maslow's pyramid.
No,
Maslow.
To go back to the pyramid, it's very important to realize like at the top is the creative expression, and the reason why the creative expression is at the top is because as much as we've created industries around creativity, it produces no value. Like paintings produce no value, music produces no value. Like money-wise, like it doesn't affect our lives if we have music or not. It's only mental.
Tell that to Scooter.
Yeah, rip. Oh, yes. Oh, wow. Scooter.
Maybe if I buy her, she'll love me.
Yeah, exactly. Let me force her to interact with me. No, but the concept of like, it doesn't affect our day-to-day lives. It only affects the mental things. And that pyramid is that concept where it's the bottom is the physical needs that keeps the brain alive, and the top is the things where the brain gets to stretch its legs. And that's something that we have to look at as people, that it's like your mental health will never be good if you don't have the basic physical needs met first. And then it's like, okay, then you go in the step by step, and that's why it's a pyramid, because you need less at the top, but the top is dependent on the bottom, where it's all like the friends are before the creative insight, because you have to have social interaction and you have to have a reason to spread your to stretch your legs. What?
That's gotta be the best.
That's unfortunate. You have to have a reason to stretch your legs.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So guys, Thursday was cloudy. Wow.
Oh man.
Wow.
That is good. But yeah, no, absolutely.
And there's Benjamin's psychological profile.
That's it. Done. That's it. Season
And it say Brian in the books.
Oh man. But no, absolutely. Yes. It is definitely like a foundational thing where you have to get the most important things out of the way if it's still going here.
Take a 5-minute break. Okay. Nonetheless, that's it.
All right, we're getting 9 minutes.
I'm gonna stop talking.
That was so good. All right. Well, yeah. So So we're talking about like your well-being, and this is like the foundational things. Obviously, like, we live in America. Food, water, even a place to live for the mass majority. Those needs are met. So it's so easy to neglect those things because it's like a cultural with a bar.
Right. I'm entitled to food, water, and shelter.
Exactly. So you don't even realize that when you're not eating, it's actually affecting you because you're so used to always having, like, it's never really been a problem.
Like, even the government will give you money to eat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah,
because we live in a developed society. Because we understand that the very basic necessities of humans is to keep them alive. You know, are those people gonna go spend their time making the arts? It's like, no, because the arts are the very highest point. Like, that sounds super pretentious, but that's not. It's like, I'm not gonna if I need food, I'm going to work to get food. I'm not going to work to go and make music. Like, and it's like, now we live in a society where people are doing that because we have an economy based around music. But the way that it works is like, I'm not going to sit like a Greek philosopher in some cave doing math problems and not have food.
Absolutely.
And that's why you see prosperity within the ancient world. It's like, okay, as Greece prospered, then philosophy would prosper. And you'd have things like coming out of Rome, you'd think like the Renaissance and everything.
Absolutely.
And you had these Germanic tribes that were never civilized and really developed, so they never had a chance to really have real art. It's like, oh, I put a stick figure on a wall, like that was great because I had 10 minutes before going to hunt the next like wildebeest buffalo.
Absolutely, and that's like we think about it today too. Like the second tier of that pyramid is safety and security. So you think about like, you know, people that have come from like very dangerous cities and how like there's so much less people that come out of there, or like it's so much harder. There's like the population of poverty is so much higher. The poor mental state is much higher in those areas, and a lot of people struggle to get out of those. It's because their safety and security needs aren't met. They never feel safe, so they don't get to the next three levels of life. You know, so they're stuck there. So it's so important to remember these things when you're making decisions in your life, and you're like, oh, I want to go live in the city because it's cheaper. Well, you're really taking a sacrifice because you're letting that you're cutting a quality of life by saving the money today.
That's what we call privilege, is the concept of, oh, you didn't have to fight for the bottom two layers, so you could work on the top three a lot easier, which is true, which is perfectly true. Now, we're not saying that everybody can't achieve all the levels of the pyramid because there's no scale to this pyramid.
Yeah.
Right.
If you eat a sandwich a day, if that's all you need to get through, your bottom layer is a lot easier than somebody who requires 3 or 4 full course meals. And the thing is that as you develop as a person, your pyramid gets larger as a whole, meaning you need a larger bottom layer to achieve a higher top layer. If you want your creativity to become larger, the pyramid as a whole has to become larger.
You got to stop drinking tap water and put down some San Pellegrino, and you'll get your creative juices flowing.
But that's so true, though. Like the greatest art pieces weren't created from someone who was at a point where they couldn't get their life together.
Hold on. Lock your windows, close your doors.
Oh, God.
Biggie Smalls
was completely comfortable in his life at that point of his career.
Give me the loop.
Yeah, no, he was at a point that point of his life, he was very comfortable. And I'm not saying like you get your breakthrough seasons, but like the actual art that creates that's lasted up until this point, I'm not sure about 100%. I can't say 100%, but a large percentage of it was created from somebody who was at a level of comfort. And that's why there's so many people that are involved in music today, because it's so hard to put all that in one person. You can't expect the one artist to write their own music, because that is a very swayy commitment to somebody. You're focusing your attention on one person that they're going to be able to take care of themselves and be at a top level, or you spread that out between a bunch of different people, and then you have a much higher chance of success.
You see a lot of things within the music industry too. You see a breakout artist, like they were swimming in the right petri dish to be able to make this breakout album. They had all their needs met. They were comfortable, but they had the place of inspiration, whether it's depression or whatever that thing was. But they had this breakout album. They get out of their comfort zone, and their mental state, because of fame, because of fortune, because of money, because everything else started to change them later.
Yep.
And they don't have that spark like they used to. They weren't swimming with the right chemicals to be able to make what they were looking for.
One artist that I work with a lot. I've worked with him for a very long period of time, and he's always made some amazing music. But he got married recently, like about a year ago, and ever since his marriage, his music has peaked peaked, like has gotten amazing. And like it's like, oh, is it the marriage that did it? I think it's the level of comfort that he got from it. The completion of whatever it was. He has a much more stable lifestyle than he used to live, and that stability gave his creativity much more legroom to stand on. And it's just amazing when you think about those kind of things, in my opinion.
And it's also the level of appeasement that you have to do goes down. Because it's like when you're first starting off, especially as a creative, you have to appease a bunch of people. You think of a TV show or a movie where it's like you're a starting director and you have to appease every single person in the company. You have to make a movie that everybody agrees with. So your creative expression is not important. But then you become Quentin Tarantino or Steven Spielberg, who if Steven Spielberg has a dream that he says, oh, I want to make a movie, people will throw money at him. And it doesn't matter if you agree with it or if you don't. You understand that Steven Spielberg is Steven Spielberg. And that's what it boils down to, is that over time, as you develop and as you make sacrifices and as you grow your pyramid, you'll be able to do things the way that you want to do them. And I think that people disregard that, where everybody's like, if I can't do it my way, I'm not going to do it at all. And it's like, that's not the option. Like, that's not the option. You're not going to be able to do it your way until you go through the process of doing it the way that it has to be done first.
And there's steps to all of it.
You know, and I guess this is where we get into like life application. It would be, you know, there are steps to this stuff. You have to start from the bottom. You have to start at the basic needs and really use it as a checklist. Like, are these things met? You know, and then go to the next level of, and this is like, it all ties down. You could break this down into a relationship. You could break this down into your mental health, spiritual health, physical health. It all stems from, like, there's a step process to everything. You can't just do it all one day and you're gonna be fine, especially if you feel really low. So becoming aware, like I said at the very first few minutes of the show, is I think awareness is key here, because you have to be aware before you can fix anything. So become much more self-aware of who you want to be, and take that time alone so that you can get your life in check. If you're spending every minute with somebody, good for you, but it does that you never have that time to really organize your life.
That's it. And if your pyramid's stacked where you're comfortable and your life is happy where it is, but you're still missing that one element. Say you're stuck in that husband or wife relationship. Be intentional to break out. If you're having a hard time being able to relate and connect with other people, or be genuine and not be awkward about having other relationships, step one is just try. And it's really beneficial, especially when it comes to men having other men as friends. Do it.
And so I think it's really for that. It's just like just go do things that you wouldn't normally do. If there's like an event, and there's like, this is what usually happens. You know, you're in a relationship, but you don't go anywhere unless your wife goes with you. So like there's like a party, your wife's working, so you're not gonna go, or the other way around. But it's like, as long as you're responsible, I'm not saying go out there and be like,
go to the club.
Yeah, don't go to the club. But like, if there's like an event that's going on, and there are people that you like, your work people you work with are having a gathering, you know what I mean? Instead of saying no, start saying yes. You know what I mean? And obviously, this is when you're in a relationship, it's a union, so you do have to talk to them first. Don't just go out, you know, like Eric from the podcast told me I could do this.
It's all like, don't
do that. Like, talk to them, but like let them know that you want to say yes more in your life, and you want to be a part of other things and meet some new people. But you have to just go. You have to be there.
And there's that balance too. It's like you make friendships outside like that, but also make sure that you include your significant other within those relationships.
And really take time to ask yourself why somebody would want to interact with you. And if that answer, if you can't come up with a reason why somebody would like you, really take a look at, do you like yourself? And don't get stuck on that only thing, because a lot of people get stuck in that depressive cycle of I hate myself. Understand that we're all developing as people. We're all improving as people.
We all suck.
It's all like the soup's not going to be good the first time. So start making changes until you become a person that you want to interact with. You would want to interact with, and people will start interacting with you.
Man, this is good.
Right? And that's it.
That's it. We roll it. Thanks for listening to the Life Podcast. If you like the show, please rate us on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us out. If you feel like supporting us in a more direct way, you can check out our Patreon page linked in the description of this video. One last thing. Please let your friends know about the podcast. If you like the show, we're sure they'll like it too. If you'd like to reach out to us, send us an email at thelifepodcastshow@gmail.com. We appreciate all of your support, and we'll see you next time. Okay, now let's have a little bit more fun with that, Benji. I don't like to have fun, Eric.